Good afternoon, everyone. Um, I am traveling. I'm actually in Houston. I have court this week, and so I'm not at my office in the Rio Grande Valley. But I was following up my last live stream. I was following up, and I was talking about Ponzi scheme. And I'll never forget there was a federal judge that had told me one time I had a case with a with somebody that had committed bank fraud, and there were some things after the sentencing was done and what have you. She called me up and was going to talk to me and said, listen, you really need to be careful with some of the people that commit these frauds, those types of crime, because of the level of deception. And they could end up stealing your identity as one of your clients. You need to be really careful. And I really took that advice to heart. Great judge, absolutely love her, one of my favorite of all time. In any event, as y'all well know, I spent the better part of my adult lifetime working on the border along Mexico in Nogales, McAllen, Brownsville area. Been up and down Laredo, El Paso. I mean, pretty much you San Isidro, you name it. I worked there before I got assigned to Washington D.C. In any event, um, one of the things that always bothered me was corruption along the border. We're there every day, literally carrying a gun and wearing a bulletproof vest for a reason. And when you have people that you work side by side with that choose that the money that they're being paid for to do the job is not enough, and that they want to accept bribes and become corrupt, it's always really bothered me. It was a very much a specific betrayal to us, to myself, and a lot of my fellow officers. But it's a betrayal of trust by the American people. They're paying you there to do a particular job to protect the country, and now you're taking money to undermine all of that. And I was recently looking. There was a case that happened actually where I used to work down at the Hidalgo Far Port of Entry, and there was a young gentleman that began to offer to pass 40 kilos. Originally, he wanted, I think, $750 a kilo, but eventually ended up settling on basically being paid $15,000 to pass 40 kilos of either coke or methamphetamine. He offered to do some things like provide them information on where to stash the load in the vehicle so it wouldn't be detected. He offered information on, if he was working at secondary and they sent it to him and he actually found the drugs, he would say that he didn't and, send it on its way. So, I mean, it was a pretty much straight up complete betrayal. And, I had an issue. I was working at another port of entry at one time that at the time, I felt that the enforcement posture was pretty lax. And come to find out, for a variety of reasons having to do with, a lot of times the investigators and where they were, assigned to McAllen, the area was too far away, what have you. There hadn't been anybody arrested over there wearing a uniform in 20 years. And some of the things that we uncovered during the time that I was there, we ended up arresting, I think the total came out to about 12 people over the next course of I don't know how many years. In fact, I recently learned of an ex customs agent that he was retired and had gotten arrested, selling a load of dope. So there's no telling what he was doing, when he was still working for the government. He was retired. So I wanted to take a look at the psychology of that, and honestly, I think a lot of people would just think that it's a failing of your morals and just being greedy, right? You're being paid. I mean, in some cases, most of those folks are making well over $100,000 a year. That the money's not enough, right? I really think that there's a lot more to it. If we examine and we look at, either your antisocial personality disorder, or truthfully, I think you look at a sociopath. I think sociopathy is probably a little bit more interesting if you look at check marking some of the boxes as far as like take this individual, for example. Yeah, I'm sure there might be some narcissism in there mixed in as well. But you look at, lack of remorse, um, there is a certain amount of guilt, probably a little bit of empathy. I'm sure that the individual, while all this stuff was going down, that he was probably scared. There were moments that he wished that he hadn't have done it. Certainly, there's moments right now while he's sitting in prison that he wishes he's not done it. But that in many cases is not like a psychopath where they completely lack any type of guilt. I think that in this particular instance, they do. Some emotions they are felt, but it's very shallow, very fleeting. But in the most part, they can also bond together with some people, as opposed to, like a psychopath that generally will fake those relationships. The sociopath does have the ability to actually bond with other people. But there is a consistent irresponsibility and repeated violations of the law, okay, with constant lying and deception. And if you see this, you think about this individual where he went back, once, twice, three times, looking for the money, setting up the deal, going to cross the load through his lane. Then it was, hey, look, I'm going to be signed over to the cargo lanes. Well, in the cargo lanes, now you can help to facilitate, thousands and thousands of kilos, right? This is a big 18-wheeler. So I really think that type of behavior, that there is an underlying issue there with the corruption, that people think they're smarter than everybody else. We go back, if you remember the name Aldrich Ames, you look at somebody like that has years long of deception, and it's just something that I think is interesting. I think it's worth examining, and I think the next time that I have a client that's been involved in something like that, I think I'm really going to try to do some diagnosis and sit back and really look at them and see what we can find. So maybe I'll update you. In any event, you can look up the individual for yourself. He was sentenced in McAllen, Texas, where not too far from my house. So take a look at it. And you look at it for yourself. So in the meantime, we will see y'all next time.